Hi guys, it's Ewan from Q-SYS Australia here. So today I'm going to show you how to build a UCI that looks like this. So a more realistic looking mixing console style UCI. We get asked about this fairly often. So you can see here we can interact with our knobs and faders. These mute buttons are actually just styled just using the standard properties. There's no CSS involved in this apart from just changing the name when it's unmuted or muted. Again, these little displays here, that's literally just changing the font and color. So you can get a decent way through without having to even look at CSS, but if you want knobs and faders that look realistic, you have to get into CSS. So there's no black magic involved in this, it's really just all in the help file. So if you go under Design, User Control Interfaces, go to UCI Styles, and then you'll see here, down you scroll here, Style Reference, and then Rendering Styles for Meters, Knobs and Faders. So everything you need is in here. Shows you, if we're looking at faders, shows you all of the different properties there, how to set them up. There's an example here which I've used as my sort of base file, and then I've just modified it from there. And then for the knobs, we're using film strip rendering. So it shows you how to do this in here as well, and gives you a few different examples. Okay, now this file is already shared on Q-SYS communities. So if you're part of the Advanced UCI and CSS group, you can grab the file which will have all of the image files and CSS in there. The CSS is applied there, but if you're going to actually want to use this in your own designs, you're going to have to use the design file, and then you install it, which is the way you do that is, I'll just jump off to a offline file. Here you go, show design resources, click on installed, and then that will show you the CSS that's installed, and then you hit this download button, and that will download not only the CSS but the actual images, if there's images in those style sheets as well. So this is one example. This was for a trade show. This is just displaying, we had a Scarhoy Waveboard Mini, which is a fantastic physical controller with faders for Q-SYS, and we were just mimicking what was happening on the Scarhoy. So we had two-way communication going between the TSC and the Scarhoy. And then another one, which I just basically, I took a image of a broadcast mixing console and just sort of replicated it just to show somebody what you could do if you spend a little bit of time. So this one I don't give out because I've totally ripped it off somebody else's product, but this one here you absolutely have access to. So to do this, you're going to need to have a little bit of an understanding of image manipulation. So if you're good with Photoshop, fantastic. The tool I use, because I'm not doing this all the time, is a thing called Pixlr, Pixlr, which is just an online photo editing software. If you want to do this and create your own, you're going to have to pay for it. It allows you some maybe 5 saves or something like that, but a day. But to do this, this is 21 different saved PNG files. So effectively, what I was doing, created these LEDs, rotate this, go around. I would hit save, export it to a PNG, add the next one, rotate it around, save, until we ended up with 21 different options. So I say 21, there's sort of 20 increments, but we have one for off. So what you do is you then go into your style sheet here. You can see under knob, we're rendering as a film strip. And then we have all of our images. So even though you use value, it's actually doing the position of the knob. In this case, it's a percentage knob. And you can see there, we've got 20 images, so we divide 1 by 20, so it gives us a 0.05 increment. And then we're just applying each image file to each value. So a little bit tedious, the saving and then doing this, but once you've got it dialed in, can create some really nice looking knobs. You can see here I've just got, that's a little tiny bit of CSS just to change the text on the mute buttons. And then up here is where I have my fader. So if I jump back into here, you can see I have a fader cap image, and then I have separate fader slot images. So you define your cap, you give it a name, and then you define this the cap class here. And then you can change some things like the height and the width and the padding. This is the image just for the slot, so obviously the fader, because it has to move in the slot, they're two separate images. So if we jump back to design file here, I'm just going to jump offline. Let's just grab this is just a custom control that I've created. So let's just grab a knob and a fader. We'll go over here into our example. I'll just remove this. We'll dump it on here. And as I apply this CSS, you can see here we've changed it. Now, one thing you'll notice is that fader looks very large at the moment compared to the slot. That's because I've defined it in pixels. Generally, when I'm working with image graphics, I like to work in pixels because, especially with faders, and I'll show you when you start lining up the 0, plus 10, minus 10 little bars, if you want them on there, scaling these things get quite hard. So I often work in absolute pixels, but there is a way to make this fader cap scale with the size of your fader. So the way we do that is using the fader cap height and fader cap width. Now you can see here that I've defined it in absolute pixels, so 140 pixels high and 70 pixels wide. But if I change this to say 20 VH, which is viewport height, so 20% of the viewport height, save that. You can see there now it's shrunk, and as I expand the fader, that cap actually will shrink the same way that a traditional Q-SYS fader does. But you can see here is as I start to drive this out in the horizontal domain, it stays the same. If you get fader images that already have the values assigned, the 0, plus 10, minus 10, it gets really, really hard because the taper probably isn't the same. For this fader, I'm using the level fader with the taper, which mimics a more traditional mixing console style fader in the way that the decibels taper as you move the fader. So that's generally the one that you're going to want to use. Now, yeah, like I said, you can get images that look exactly like a mixing console with all the text on there, but I don't recommend using them because, yeah, you won't get the fader to line up perfectly, especially once it gets into the lower values. So all I've done here in this one, that I've literally just put these in myself. So I've set the fader value, so I've, when I'm emulating, put it to 10, 1 to 0, put 1 to minus 10, and then I've just gone through and lined up these values. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that, so I've got this plus 10 right at the top of the fader. Now, if I take away the padding here, so go into my CSS, I'm just going to remove all of this padding that I've got here. Okay. Save that, jump back into here, emulate again. Now, when I sort of push this all the way up to the top of the fader, if I was to move this up so it lines up, oops, I'm going to re-emulate and move my fader down. You see it's actually sitting above the slot. So what we can use is we can use padding to set the limits of how far up and down our fader cap will actually travel in the slot. So this slot's obviously got the little rivet graphic in there, so we need to stop the fader a little bit earlier. So we're using padding to do that. So in here, I'm just going to stop at 5 pixels. And you can see in the help file, it runs you through all of the various options for padding. You can see here, if we're setting, sort of margins around that slot that fader cap will sit into, and then you can of course shift them left or right as well. Alright, so hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of how these things, how to set them. If I just come off emulating, so my CSS file will apply and save that. You'll see there that the fader's shifted back down to where it was now. Okay, so the knobs, again, pretty self-explanatory from here once we've defined this. And we haven't used the dot here, so in CSS, we can basically make every single fader in our UCI look like this by just defining fader here and knob. That will do all faders and all knobs. If we wanted to just do some specific faders in our UCI, then we would use the dot there, and we could call it something else like that, and then we could assign it to specific faders. But in here, we're going to do it for everything, just to keep it simple. You can see here on the knobs, again, we're just defining our knob images. There are all of my images, and then as we save that, jump back over here, and then as we move a knob, you can see there it's nice and smooth as we're, so obviously the more increments you can have, the smoother your knob is going to look. So I hope that helps. Good luck mucking around, creating your own. If you do need some images and knobs as examples, a really good spot to look is something like Shutterstock. Again, nothing good, well, very little good comes for free, so you've got to pay for these images, but you can get some cool looking different faders, and then you could use your editing software to cut out the physical faders or the slots and move them around. Alright, good luck with that. Any questions, just post them up on communities, and I will do my best to answer. Cheers.